All right, well, very good, everyone. Welcome to our program about our birding trip into Belize. This happened back in February, and it's great to see we have our fellow birders have a really good appearance here on the program. Because it's kind of like a dream that we were ever there because it was so many months ago. But fortunately, we do have the photos to prove it, and so we're going to prove it to you that we were actually there. Next, please. We were led by Mary Keith, who was our trip leader, our tour organizer, and she managed to get all of us complete with our travel documents, our COVID-19 tests, and everything else we needed to the Tampa airport on a very cold February morning to head to tropical Belize. First, I did want to introduce you to our group. This is our Belize birding bunch. Jim and Jill Smith, Jim Hingelbrock and his brother Tom, who joined us from Cincinnati. Then we have Bibzi Priori Sheets and Roger Sheets. And then yours truly with my lovely wife of all these years, Pat. So this is this is a brief introduction to Belize video. We need to have sound here.
You didn't have any sound?
I didn't hear the sound.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not playing.
Are you hearing sound now, Mike?
I don't see it moving and I don't hear the sound. Did anyone else?
No.
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 Yeah.
Well, let's see here, because I can hear the sound here.
If you allow me to share the screen, I can give it a try from my
All right, go ahead. You should be able to. Sorry about that, folks. It worked when we tried it.
Located on the Caribbean coast of Central America, Belize. Are you able to hear that one, everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we'll go. Belize was known as British Honduras before 1973, so English is an official language here. Over 50% of the land in Belize is protected from development, which preserves many diverse habitats. Belize is one of the smallest countries in the Western Hemisphere, only about 170 miles long and 70 miles wide. By preservation of its habitats, Belize has one of the highest bird species densities in the world. For us, this means there are a whole lot of bird species to see in Belize. Our group flew into Belize City, then the next day we traveled by van through the northern parts of Belize to the remote Chanchich Lodge in the tropical rainforest near the Gallon Jug community. After 3 days of world-class birding in Chanchich, we returned to Belize City by this northern route. The following day, we took a short trip to the Crooked Tree Sanctuary for another exciting day of birding in different habitats. Belize City is the country's largest city with a population over 60,000 people. This is a favorite spot for tourist selfies and a tourist market for cruise ship passengers. Belican is the country's most popular beer, and as you can see, I took a liking to the local brew. This is the Supreme Court building in Belize City. The national capital is in Belmopan, 50 miles inland. We're leaving the next morning, jumping into a van and taking a paved highway and then dirt roads to Chanchich Lodge. After a couple hours drive, we're in Belize's hill country. We stopped for lunch near Spanish Lookout, then did some great birding. Now for the next hour and a half, we have only dirt and gravel roads to Chanchich. Everybody ready to duck and cover? We're getting close now. Chanchich Lodge is literally in the middle of nowhere, only about 5 miles from the border with Guatemala. The Chanchich welcoming party was something like the old Fantasy Island TV show. With warm greetings, they brought all of us tropical cocktails as we stepped out of the van. The name Chanchich means little bird in the Maya language. The landscaping of the grounds is breathtaking. It's a tropical paradise of spectacular beauty. The resident ocellated turkeys have green feathers and blue heads. They are distant cousins of U.S. wild turkeys. They are found only in the Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize. The lodge is located in the central plaza of a 1,500-year-old Maya settlement. At Chanchich Lodge, the rooms have no keys. There is mosquito netting over the beds. There's no air conditioning, only ceiling fans. There's no television, which is just fine. And the room mini bars are stocked with complimentary all-you-can-drink beer and Coca-Cola products. At first light each morning from our thatched roof bungalows, we hear howler monkeys. We had great camaraderie in our Tampa Audubon group. Here we're out on the trail, looking up at the rainforest canopy. We see spider monkeys. Word to the wise, be sure to keep your mouth closed when looking up. We took an archaeological walk to the Maya burial mound, so for a while we got to play Indiana Jones. Here's the burial chamber which was looted years ago. Our guide shows us a painting on the wall. Then we're back on the trail with scopes, binoculars, and cameras as night falls on Chanchich Lodge. We go on a night drive. Our guide spotted wildlife for us. We saw owls and ocelots scampering into the woods, and then this. Seemed like it was just trying to get back to Mexico. Chanchich Lodge served us some very well-prepared meals. We're now in our safari buggy heading for the escarpment, which is a lookout point above the rainforest. We cross a bridge over Chanchich Creek, up the road to reach the escarpment, and Mary Keith, our tour leader and birder extraordinaire, rode shotgun to help point out the birds to us. Look up there. We look for raptors soaring on the thermals with our guides and our scopes. Later, our guides took us to this beautiful setting at Laguna Verde, where we had snacks and happy hour while we birded alongside the lake at sunset. We tally how many new birds we had already seen in Belize, but wait, there's more. The birding continued. Leaving Chanchich, we head back to Belize City. This is Gallon Jug Estate farmland near Chanchich Lodge. We birded in the rainforest and also made comfort stops in the rainforest. Of course, there's no plumbing, there's no outhouses, so boys on the right, girls on the left. This Mennonite General Store supplies everything from fan belts to groceries and Bibles to all the local farmers. Here we get a view across the Rio Hondo into Mexico. We saw fields of rice around Blue Creek Village. Orange Walk Town was our lunch and our comfort stop. We enjoyed lunch here. The next day, we drove to Crooked Tree Sanctuary, managed by the Belize Audubon Society. Crooked Tree is a translation of the Maya word for the cashew nut tree, which grows here abundantly. Again, we enjoyed great Belizean food. We took a boat ride on the lake, finding new bird species and this large crocodile, said to be more aggressive than Florida's alligators. Here's our group at Crooked Tree, and then back to Belize City, we're counting our species. It's over 200 bird species. Here in Belize, we've had an adventure of a lifetime.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Mike put that all together. So let's see if I can get back to. All right, come on. All right. Sorry about this again, folks. Let me do it this way because I want to. Okay. There we go. All right. Now, can people hear me?
Yes.
Yep. All right. Good. So most
And
of these.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Because I had a couple more things to,
All right, go right ahead.
to add to that. I wanted to thank two of our great Tampa Audubon members who are really master bird photographers, shown here, Bibzi Priori and Roger Sheets. The vast majority of the photos in the upcoming gallery that we're going to show you and that Mary's going to describe were taken by these two photographers. They're really extraordinary. I'm sure you'll agree once you see them. I also want to say I learned a great deal about bird photography from them. So I know you're going to enjoy the photos coming up that we saw. And next, please, Mary. I also can't say enough. Our entire Belize birding group can't say enough about Mary Keith, who was our tour leader, the trip organizer. She originally began planning this trip to Belize back in 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic and travel plans changed. But she kept working on the trip. She persevered. And without her, obviously, this Belize trip would never have happened. She was our teacher. She was our birding expert while we were there. She was our logistics manager to make sure everything came off on schedule. Sometimes our photographer, and often, but most importantly, she was our comfort stop scheduler. That was a very important job at certain times. In short, she's been our inspiration for better birding, and now I'll introduce Mary Keith to tell us about the birds that we saw in Belize.
And I need to say thank you very much to Mike, not only for that introduction, but also he put most of this PowerPoint together. So big thank you to him for all of that. So what we're going to try to do is roughly follow our route and show you what we saw along the way. So Belize City, it happened to be a day when I think we counted 4 cruise ships out in the bay, and so that little red and yellow trolley was busy tootling up and down along the shoreline there, shuttling cruise ship passengers around. It's a strange mixture of a city. There's brand new, and then there's some old. We don't know what this lovely building was, but it is now roofless and has trees growing through it. But birds, several of us stayed in a hotel where the restaurant was up on the roof, which gave us eye-level views of lots and lots of frigate birds. And this male you can see his red pouch there. We don't usually get to see the pouches on the frigate birds, but there were lots of them sailing past. Instead of boat-tailed grackles, we had great-tailed grackles. They're bigger than our boat tails, but just as loud, just as noisy, just as gregarious. They were popping around all over the place the whole time. Out on the water, rather than double-crested, they were neotropical cormorants, and there were bunches of those. They're smaller than a double-crested, but they have a longer tail. And 2 interesting things about them was I was reading up on them. One of them is these birds will actually dive from the air going after fish. Now, not from big distances, just from a couple of feet, but that's something you would never see a double-crested cormorant do. And the local name, it basically translates as a pig duck because their sound sounds like a pig, oink, oink. So very interesting birds. Roger and Dottie and I walked out along the shoreline. It's mostly big rocks, riprap with a walk along it. And we happened upon this little pectoral sandpiper bouncing along on the rocks. It is in the middle of an utterly amazing 19,000-mile migration in 1 year. They breed way up on the high Arctic. They spend the winter down in southern South America, but a year-round trip, 19,000 miles. It just blows my mind, but he was quite happy bopping around, posing for us. So like Mike said, we headed out. The first part of the drive was paved, and then we hit the dirt road, but we were looking at lots of birds along the way. There were social flycatchers, and they are gregarious. You rarely saw one. It was usually 2 or 3 or 4. But social flycatchers on the wires the whole way around. And interestingly, even though they are flycatchers, and you will probably notice there are lots of flycatchers in this slideshow, these birds will also eat fruits and berries, things like that. So not strictly flycatchers. Once we got past the main cattle ranching area, we had probably a good 45 minutes of deforestation. I mean, this is very typical, up and down, up one hill and down the next, but just all the trees are gone. A lot of it was pasture. There were very few places where we saw any kind of row crops going in, but just miles and miles of deforestation. There were birds there. We had beautiful looks at a gray hawk. And these guys, they're related to buteos, look very much like a red shoulder or a red-tailed hawk. They mostly eat lizards. So very, very interesting, beautiful. Scissor-tailed flycatchers. This one happens, thank goodness, to be on a branch, but we saw a lot of them just sitting on the wires around the cattle pastures. They're bigger and long-tailed than the scissor-tailed that sometimes show up here in Florida in the winter, but very beautiful, elegant birds. White-tailed kites also out in this area. Aerial grabbers, eaters, similar to the swallow-tailed kites. But these guys mostly go for small mammals rather than insects, the way the swallowtail kites do. These will go for the mice and the voles, but beautiful, elegant birds. And then the roadside hawks. These were, I mean, so common everywhere. And you can see there's some variation in the coloration. There's quite a bit of variation in these birds, but we saw them the whole way around the whole loop. They were out sitting everywhere. And one of the things that I thought was funny, the scientific name, and I didn't write that down, but the scientific name means big-nosed. And you can see from the size of the bill there's a pretty good sized beak for going after their mice and lizards and snakes prey. Groove-billed Annies, big, floppy-tailed, big-nosed, always in families, and they just bounced and flopped through the thickets, through the brush, on the fence, off the fence. Interestingly enough, it's that floppiness is part of their feeding pattern, because what they do when there's a bunch of them bouncing around in there is it's stirring up the insects, the lizards, the little frogs that they eat. So it's not just for their good looks, shall we say. That's how they get their food. Once we got through the deforestation and started heading up the hill into Chanchich, or closer to Chanchich, then we got back into some of the native, well, not completely native, but the forest. There's been a lot of logging through there, but with the change in habitat into the trees, now we had a whole different set of birds, the birds that prefer the forested areas, the covered areas. And one of the first ones that we found was the rufous-tailed jacamars. They're not real big. They are related to kingfishers. This is a female. The male has a bright white throat, but they perch and then fly out and grab insects, dragonflies, wasps. And interestingly, they'd also eat butterflies, but they distinguish apparently the butterflies just by their shape, rather than many birds will look at colors. And I mean, like the monarchs, birds don't eat the monarchs because they've learned that the orange color means they don't taste good. Well, the jacamars use the shape more than they use the color to distinguish what's good or not so good. And I forget who spotted this, but these are one of the birds that tend to just sit pretty still and then fly out, grab it, and come back again. So somebody had some really good eyes spotting that. White-necked puffbirds, these are bigger, and you see that heavy bill. Cicadas, large insects, some fruit, and there's at least one report where they actually caught and ate a hummingbird. So pretty voracious little predators there. And they'll bring things, they'll fly out and catch them and then bring them back and beat them against the branch, tenderize them or knock pieces off them. I'm not sure, but a family of birds that we don't have here in the States. And we did try to focus a little bit on what we don't usually see in the States. Laughing falcon, and just like a laughing gull, this one is named for its call, a har, har, har kind of thing. It's also falcon, very fast, very agile predator. We saw several of them sitting in the trees along the road going up. Tropical kingbirds, it's another flycatcher, and this one is so common, everybody just calls it, oh, it's another TK. It's another TK. But more yellow than our great crested flycatcher, for example, but really just another TK. Boat-billed flycatcher, you can see from the size of that bill, very broad, flat bill, bigger than the social flycatcher, although it looks a good bit like it, but very, very easy to distinguish. I mean, the size of the head and the size of the bill was such that pretty much with a glance you could tell whether you were looking at a boat-billed or a social. And this is a scissor-tailed flycatcher. It's a state bird of Oklahoma. There are some that every year get lost, and instead of going south for their migration, they end up here down on Sweat Loop Road and some of the areas down there in the Balm, Waimama area. Really pretty bird with that beautiful salmony pink underside. But we did see a lot of them as well. And just to show you some of the difference, this is one of Roger's great shots of that, the fork-tailed flycatcher. See how long, so much longer that tail is than the scissor tail. But beautiful birds, both of them, and we did see them all along on fences in the woods. We found some tropical mockingbirds. At first glance, they look very much like our locals, but they have a much smaller patch of white in the wing, but more white in the tail. So very similar, but just enough different that this is a tropical rather than our northern mockingbird. We found several flocks here and there of mangrove swallows. They look a good bit like the tree swallows that we're used to here. They're a little bit smaller, but if you notice that white rump, that was really the giveaway. We'd see the swallows circling, and as soon as you saw the white rump, you knew that it was a mangrove swallow. And just like so many other birds, we haven't taught it to read English yet. It doesn't know it's supposed to stick around the mangroves. We saw these up in the woods, in the pastures around the lodge. So they do move around a lot more than just mangroves. We made it to the lodge. This is a view from up on top of one of the Mayan mounds, looking down onto, I think this was the office and reception building. But you see, it was just a beautiful, beautiful, the whole Eco Lodge area. And it's set in the plaza of a Mayan city. So the mounds are still there. Some of them have been excavated. They're not doing active excavation, but there is a university that comes down generally every year, and they're continuing to map the area, keep finding more mounds out in the jungle. tracking the roads, trying to set up the links of what this particular city was linked to. And they don't know what the Mayan name for it was, but this was a view of the lodge. Some of the stelae, the stones, are still there in place, although a lot of them are, most of the design is missing from the original ones. It's just over, 1,500 years, the wind and the rain and everything have eroded a lot of it away. This one is a copy of one of the original ones. The original is in a museum, but this was standing by the entrance road. So this is part of what the local people saw when they came in and out of that town years ago. Ocellated turkeys, they were yard birds. They were just hanging around everywhere, completely unconcerned by us. Beautiful, gorgeous. You can see that blue and glittering bronze and black, and then all those wattles on the heads. The males get these knobs with even more orange wattles, and in breeding season they'll get a wattle that hangs from the top of the nose down over the top of the bill down over the side, and even it has wattles on it. They are hunted if they're not in a protected area. These birds obviously know that they're protected, so they were out and around and quite unconcerned, but just gorgeous birds. So every morning and afternoon we walked out from the lodge, unless we were driving someplace, but this is just a sample of what the paths were. One of the trails that we were on one morning is the remnants of the Mayan road, but you can see it's just completely grown in. And our two guides, the two men with the masks off to the right there facing us, were just absolutely spectacular at hearing the bird, identifying it that way, seeing it, getting us on it. They were both just wonderful. The older one is, they said, is one of the top bird guides in the country, and the younger one is his protege. But there were birds. We stopped various times to look at the leafcutter ants. You're walking along and all of a sudden you see this line of moving green little tiny bits of leaves walking themselves across the path. And what they do is they cut the pieces of the leaves and take them down to their nests underground and grow fungus on them. And what the ants eat is actually the fungus that is growing on the leaf pieces that they carry underground. So the ants are actually farming the fungus and bringing in the substrate for their food. Black orchids, not big, but certainly beautiful. This is the national flower of Belize. Obviously not all black, but black and purple tipped on that beautiful white flower. And these two, the guides found and pointed out to us. Back at looking at more of the birds that we saw along there around the lodge, one of the most common was this long-billed hermit. And the picture on the left shows you just how easily that bill fits down into a flower to be able to pull out the nectar. But I asked Mike to put that silhouette picture in just so you can see, how long that bill is. It's a large hummer, very large hummer, but with a nice long bill and a long tail. And that posture with the tail flipped down is very characteristic. But the hermits just zipped back and forth, zing, zing, zing around us. They didn't care that we were there eating lunch. They wanted lunch too, and the flowers were right beside the tables. Green-breasted mangoes, another pretty common bird. This is a male. The females have a black stripe down the middle of a white chest. But these were also pretty common, just right beside us. We were sitting at the table on the porch eating lunch, and here they came, zip, zip, zip. The white-necked Jacobin, and I really like this picture because you can see how they can open the tip of their bill a little bit. It's not a rigid bill. That bill has some flexibility. And not only will they sip nectar with their tongue, but they will also grab insects out of the air. These were not the biggest, but certainly the bossiest. They were chase everybody else away. And you can't see it, but just a tiny little bit there on the back of the head. But they do have a white line across their nape from which they get their name, white-necked Jacobins. So these were another of the hummingbirds that we saw. Masked Tatiras. This is a much larger bird. The male is beautiful, all bright white, except for that red mask and a black line around the eyes. This female is showing the brown on her head as well. I have to read you this. This is from the eBird description. Distinctive call is a wet quacking or farting sound. So their call does not match the elegance of their look, but very distinctive and bright white, so it's easy to see them. These were some others that were popping in and out of the flower bushes right around the lodge as well. Red-cap manakins. The male, obviously, is the one that they're named for, the red cap. The female is very, very dull. They both have the white eye. Manakins are noted for setting up leks. So when it's breeding season, the males in an area will all get together and pick an area, clean out, break off the little twigs and leaves to make a nice, clean, clear area. And they dance, they bounce back and forth, hop along those branches, and the females come along and watch them and choose the best dancer. So this one had his mate, so he was obviously a good enough dancer that he got to breed this year. But both of them, the male and the female, were bouncing around through the bushes right there in the lodge grounds as well. This little guy happened to show up right behind the office building and sat up there on the tree and posed for us for half an hour. Central American pygmy owl. It's only recently been separated from the ferruginous pygmy owl, and we don't seem to have a picture of it, but if it turned around, it would look like it was still looking at you, because the pygmy owls have eye spots, big black spots on either side of the nape on the back of the head. So it's one type of protection. A predator, no matter which side he looks at, thinks he's being looked at. But they're smaller even than the our eastern screech owls, but they do hunt during the day. So and this one was out sitting there hunting. Parrots and parakeets. There were bunches of those going over. The olive-throated parakeet, loud, noisy. That big white spot around the eye was very characteristic of these. Long-tailed like a parakeet. It was interesting when I looked it up in my bird guide, because it has the Spanish names as well. The Spanish name means this is the dirty-chested parakeet. You can see the sort of brownish gray to the front there. This little guy, an olivaceous wood creeper, Tom saw him, I saw him, somebody else saw him, but very shy, very inconspicuous. Sort of resembles a brown creeper, or is a little bit bigger than a nuthatch, but very inconspicuous. And thank goodness Roger got a good picture of him, so we were able to identify it as an olivaceous wood creeper. There are several dozen wood creepers. This was the only one we saw, but he was quite comfortable just in the gardens right there at the lodge. So out again, this was another one of our walks. Not sure where we were headed or what we were looking at that point, but we did go down. The lodge is on the Gallon Jug estate, and they have a huge, the company that owns this owns a huge chunk of land, most of which is in a conservation agreement. But they did keep a couple of 100 acres for cattle pasture, because that's traditionally what it had been used for. So we did go down and drive one afternoon around the cattle pasture looking for the birds that prefer the open areas rather than that more enclosed forest. One of the things that you cannot miss are the brown jays. They're big, bigger than a blue jay. They are noisy, just like our blue jays, but very interestingly, they have a bit more eclectic taste. There were lots of deer, and the jays were on the deer. And you can see how happy this doe looks. I mean, she's just standing there. And they did. They would stand there and put their tail up or turn their head or flip their ear. The jays were pulling ticks off the deer. And, you know, some places there'd be 3, 4, 5 jays on one deer, but not something that you would see the blue jays doing here, but very interesting. Yellow-bellied Elanias, this is another whole family of flycatchers, mostly tropical woodland birds. Really hard to identify, except that this one, the yellow-bellied one, is noted for having that shaggy crest. So it's almost always has the crest flipped up. So in that sense, it was very cooperative in helping us to identify it. Bunches of woodpeckers, rather than red-bellied, the golden-fronted, it's very similar, a little bit bigger, does have some red, pink down there on the belly, but right around the base of the bill, it's got a yellow face. So we saw a lot of those. Down in the grass, Morlet seed eaters. If any of you have birded in the tropics before, you probably have white-collared seed eaters, but they've now been split. And the species, new species, used to be a subspecies that's in Belize, is Morlet's seed eaters. The male's on the left, the female on the right. But down in the grass, down in the bushes, with that big heavy bill, eating seeds. Black-cowled orioles, I need to turn a light on here. We had a lot of different orioles. This is a young male because you see he's still got some yellow on his back. The adult is solid black up the back and the nape. And unlike the Baltimore orioles, these guys are not very vocal. They're known for not singing very much. Parrots, white-crowned parrot was the most common that we saw. And the easy way to at least say whether it's a parrot or a parakeet is the parrots have short tails, the parakeets have long tails. And this one, because of that big white forehead, was generally pretty easy to identify going over. It's got a sort of a purpley blue back and shoulders, very pretty bird, but most of the time just flying over. It was, Roger got a good shot here for when it happened to sit down to give us a better look. Lots of tanagers. small birds about the size of our scarlet tanagers or a little bit smaller, but many, many colors. And this was a golden hooded. It was not being super cooperative in terms of showing us its nice gold hood, but it is black and shades of blue and white, and then a beautiful golden hood on the back. Males and females are alike. They eat mostly fruits and berries. This was another one of the tanagers, yellow winged, not so spectacular on the head, but that bright yellow spot stood out on the wing. So that was another one of the tanagers that we found. The black-cheeked woodpecker, smaller than our red-bellied, but you can see the red spot there, definitely related. It's in the same family. This one is the only one that's got black on its face. So that was another one that made it easy to identify. And you heard the howler monkeys. Forget about alarm clocks. They were hooting and hollering at dawn every morning. You were going to be awake whether you set your alarm or not. And there were at least 2 families. The one guide said there were 3 families in the area. So they would have howling fests every morning to determine their territory. Absolutely spectacular, the Whitehawks. The first morning that we were there, when we started out, it was very foggy, very hazy. And this bird, you can see from the background, it finally cleared up. But this bird came up and just sat in the tree above us and posed, trying to warm up and dry its feathers off. But they're as big as a black vulture, and just this gorgeous, glaring, spectacular white. Beautiful, beautiful birds. The spider monkeys, long arms, long legs. Various times we have families swinging through the trees overhead. And yes, as Mike said in the video, you didn't want to stand beside them because if they don't have anything else to throw at you, they will throw their own excrement. So luckily we avoided irritating them. We didn't have any of that. I'm not sure what kind of spider it was, but the dew, I mean, you see what a glorious cobweb that is. But from all the droplets, you see how dewy it was. It was just a beautiful morning. And then I think it was the second evening that we were there, we did the night drive, and this is a full moon coming up straight ahead. That stream was the Chanchich Creek. The ocelot ran across the road just in front of us, but it
Can't hear you.
I think you froze, Mary.
Yeah, she froze up. There are a lot of storms around right now. Okay.
She might have to rejoin us.
Yeah.
She's probably still talking about the ocelot.
Spectrum internet fell off at the beginning of the meeting, and there's some widespread outages going on.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah, I've been off since the beginning. I'm on my phone. My battery's going down.
Wow.
Bibzi and Roger, amazing photos. The one so far that just struck me was as amazing was that spider web photo.
Yeah,
That
that's
that
really
was out.
beautiful.
I mean, there's so many really great photos, but that was pretty amazing. to get that lighting just right and the close up.
Now, for those that were there, I'm curious how buggy it was.
Not
Really?
that much.
It was not buggy.
I don't remember getting bit at all.
It was really surprisingly unbuggy because I
Yeah.
was afraid of it.
I agree. I mean, we sprayed up,
Yeah,
an ounce of
and-
prevention,
As far as
but
mosquitoes and everything, there wasn't.
I don't
much of that
remember
at all.
mosquitoes being a problem at all.
And being in February, it was kind of like here, being tropical, it was the dry season. So it wasn't particularly wet and not that many puddles around for mosquitoes. So mosquitoes weren't really an issue, surprisingly enough. So we all had bug spray, but it wasn't really a problem. If you go perhaps at this time of year, it could be very different.
I think it definitely would be. It's definitely not the tourist season, but that's when the locals in Belize go to the resorts and they get a discount.
They get a discount with the bugs.
That's right. And the rain. I mean, it rains every day.
Yeah, it rains.
We didn't have a
yeah.
whole lot of rain.
Just the
No.
day we got there, really.
I mean, that's why we chose to travel at that time of year rather than the rainy season.
Yeah.
Or what Mary chose, I should say.
I texted Mary, she lost her internet. She
Yeah.
said Mick has the slides, and so I just texted Mick to see if he can pick up the slides.
I can
That's not, Mike can. I do
Yeah, I
not.
can share. No, I can share.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't think I can do quite the same detailed presentation of what we saw.
We can all pitch in and help out until Mary gets back.
Yeah, I'll be glad to pinch hit, but let's see. Whoops, sorry.
You guys really did get
Can't help you
around.
there, Mike.
That
was
the
a local bar we went to.
Yeah, that was the cantina.
Oh, okay.
Belize City is
That was the
really amazing.
cantina at the lodge. Okay, let me try to share again.
Yeah.
We saw the photos of the social flycatchers. Did you get other kiskadees down there as well?
Yeah, I was surprised that those were not in. Yeah, wasn't it the greater Kiskadee guys?
Yeah, we
that we
didn't.
saw?
Yeah, we didn't.
I
don't think we had a real
saw
good shot.
greater Kiskadee.
Yeah, I don't think we got a real good shot of a Kiskadee. I don't remember for sure.
Maybe not a good photo, but they were definitely
they were
They
there.
were
yeah.
there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I remember trying to tell them apart from the socials. They look like a much bigger social flycatcher. And the boat build we saw, but not nearly as I didn't think we saw as many of those as the greater Kiskadee.
No, I think we only saw one boat build.
Crooked Tree, as I recall.
Mhm.
Didn't happen to encounter any army ants there, did you?
Good question. I mean,
We
maybe
can't-
we did, and we didn't know what we were seeing. We didn't encounter any that were, like obviously crossing the path in front of us that we had to avoid. I don't recall that. Do any of you guys?
When we were at Crooked, the reason I ask is when we were at Crooked Tree, we were birding in the woods around the edge of the lagoon there, and we came across an area of the forest that was absolutely carpeted with army ants. I mean, it was just a solid mass of them. And of course, there's a whole group of birds that are kind of army ant specialists that will follow the army ants and eat the insects that the army ants scare up. Well, it was quite a sight.
Are you all now able to see the screen with the bridge?
We can see it.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, I think is this where Mary left off?
That is where Mary left
I
off.
think so, yeah, because she was talking about the ocelot that was fleeing away, and it was so fast, nobody with a camera had a chance to get it.
But our guide was shining a very bright light, and you could see its eyes shining, and you could see its shape pretty well.
Yeah. So this was the Middle American screech owl. Uh, I can't say that much more about it. Anybody want to add? She notes here it was split from the vermiculated screech owl. This was all during the night tour. Barn owl, Roger got a good shot of the barn owl. And this was the night tour was basically out in the field area primarily. So that's why it's noted here that it's in forest as well as the fields. Here's the mottled owl. This is a shot that I was able to get that evening. Same size as the barn owl. Like Jim said, the guides had really bright spotlights. And, you know, they would spot something and shine the light on it that was enough light for us to take reasonably good photographs. This is the paraque, related to the nighthawks. Catches the insects in the air. And if you take it from a different angle, or if the light's coming from a different angle, the eyes glow red. This one, I believe, Roger, was right on the ground, wasn't it? That's all the grass around it. And the yellow-crowned night heron, we found out why they're called night herons. Again, this was out in the pasture land by the Golden Jug Estate. So it's kind of unusual being from Florida and seeing plenty of herons to see one in a cow pasture without really any lake or water around.
There were many of them.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of juveniles too.
And then the next day we went out to what's called the escarpment. This is a raised area. It's like cliffs, almost like a mountain, overlooking the rainforest. And so this was our safari buggy. It's similar to buggies they use on African safaris. In fact, I think that's where they got it from. You can see it holds like what, 12 people or so, enough for our guides and all of us. It's quite a drive just to get there. But this is the view from the top. Roger, I think this is a panorama that you got. It's a view to, and although it's not the entire panorama, but it does give the wide view that we could see looking out over the rainforest. And this view is to the east. The escarpment looks off to the east, back toward the coast. I mean, we're 50, 60 miles from the coast, so you can't see that, but Guatemala is at our backs, only probably about 4 or 5 miles away at this point. But really a spectacular view, and of course the purpose of going here is to see the various raptors, the birds of prey, catch the thermals and circle around, and we saw quite a few. But on the way up there, this was the great curassow, and what an unusual bird. I had no idea anything like this existed. It's about the size of a turkey. As Mary has here, it has a white vent, but very unusual bird here. Anybody else want to make a comment about it? I believe this was just alongside of the road on the drive up there.
That's a really good picture. I didn't get that good of a look at the bird.
Well, you get to see it now.
Now we get to really see it now. That's right.
Yeah, sometimes that happens when we're taking pictures. We don't get a really good view of it till we look at the pictures later. But it's a great shot.
Really fortunate to have Roger and Bibzi along, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really a great shot. And then this is Tom. You can tell he's a dedicated naturalist. He was out of the buggy alongside of the road and climbing up the roots of the tree, but there was a nice bromeliad that he wanted to get a close-up picture of. But what we wanted to point out here was this is the size of the tree. You see, Tom was down here at the very bottom where the bromeliad is, and that was the size of the tree. Just amazing on the way up to the escarpment.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember what kind of tree that was. Do you guys remember?
We thought maybe it was mahogany, but we're not positive either. Maybe
Yes,
one of the
it's
other two.
mahogany.
Is
Mahogany?
it?
Yeah.
It's a huge mahogany. I think they said it's the national tree of
Yeah,
Belize.
national
Yeah.
tree. That's correct. That's correct. But it was just amazing. Both the bromeliad, both Tom climbing out of the buggy and running over to take a picture of it, and the size of the tree. It was all just amazing. And then the other amazing things were these toucans. Here's 5 of them all on the same tree. They eat fruit and berries, and usually they are in groups. Here's a good close-up by Bibzi here. Mary has a note, has a face like this, but it sounds like a frog. And right at this point is when we had a flock of toucans fly over us. It was just a mass of yellow and green and red. And Mary counted something like 40, 42.
43, I remember.
43, yeah. It was just, it flew right up over, it was the open buggy.
I submitted that on eBird and got a questioning. Or can you verify this? I said, yeah, Mary Keith counted them by ones. We all saw them.
Yeah,
That's
but
that's the
that wasn't
Fruit Loops
amazing.
toucan, by the way.
The Fruit Loops. Yeah, this is the keel-billed, right? The keel-billed toucan. But that was just a spectacular view that we had right above the open safari buggy with 40 toucans flying above us.
Definitely one of the highlights.
Yeah, the hooded oriole. Roger got a good view of this one. Makes a long hanging nest like the other orioles. The white-whiskered puffbird. This is a nice, really crisp shot with the eye. It's small, sits on the horizontal branches. These were all on the way up to the escarpment. This is a yellow warbler. So it's from back up here, probably on the way home, part of migration. So we did see a lot of migratory birds while we were there. And this is the, I'm sorry, I moved past it.
What is that?
Okay, is this a tanager? I can't see the top of this on my screen.
It looks like one of the cuckoos.
Cuckoos,
I think that is the
Squirrel
squirrel
cuckoo.
Squirrel
cuckoo.
cuckoo. The squirrel
Yeah.
cuckoo, yeah. About 18 inches long, has a yellow bill and the characteristic red eyes. Yeah, thanks for that, Doug.
Where'd that gray bar come from? It's covering up the name of the bird.
Yeah, that's on my screen. It is.
It's on ours too.
Yeah, it should go away. It seems like when I'm screen sharing, it stays up there though.
I make out enough to tell you that's the ornate hawk eagle.
That is the ornate hawk eagle. Yeah, that was a spectacular view too. This was a juvenile, and so as noted here, it gets up to 4 feet long. It was quite a distance away. A very unusual find, a very unusual spotting, but a magnificent bird.
That we can't see the top of its head. It's got kind of a crest coming out the top.
Yeah, I'm afraid to press anything here. Okay, that changed it, didn't that? Put it down at the bottom?
That's better.
Is that better? Yeah.
Yeah. We can see the name of the bird and we can see the top of its head.
Yeah.
We go back to the previous one with that flycatcher. We never got that one.
Might have been a kiskadee.
I think it was the royal flycatcher.
Oh, the royal?
I think that's
Can
what
you
it
go
was.
back, Mike?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Now that I moved this down, my arrows don't work. There we go. Royal flycatcher.
Royal.
Okay.
Move to the head of the class. Whoever said that.
Can you go back to that cuckoo?
Yeah, there we go. I got it under control now. Yeah, the squirrel cuckoo. This was an
There.
excellent shot. Yeah, look at the bright red eyes that are characteristic. The squirrel cuckoo. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
And the bat falcon.
Hmm.
So same size as our kestrels. This was out at the escarpment. This while we were on top, where you just saw that view that Roger took of the rain above the rainforest. This was out there. And here we have the comment. Looks like there's more bat falcons on the way. Excellent shot, Roger. Right at the right moment. Okay, then that was the end of the birds that we saw at the Chanchich area. And so we drove back to Belize City, and then the next day went out to the Crooked Tree Sanctuary. This is the one mentioned in the video that is co-managed, or managed in part at least, by the Belize Audubon Society. And here you have a lot of lagoons, streams, woods, and tangles and lowlands, a lake that we took a boat ride on, but an outstanding place for birding.
I believe Mary said that was logwood, because I kept thinking it was dogwood, but only to realize she was saying logwood.
Yeah, logwood, I believe that's what it's called, that tangled wood that grows like that. I believe, yes, is called logwood, correct. And I mean, this was an amazing shot here by Bibzi, head-on view of the yellow-headed vulture. Looks similar to the turkey vulture, but very distinctive with some yellow on its face. And these are bare-throated tiger herons, obviously with herons alongside some water. And on the right, Roger got a male and a female. It's around the size of a reddish egret, a little huskier, but very distinctive with the stripes. Therefore, its name, a tiger heron.
They were also pretty elusive. It seems like as soon as we saw them, they would fly off.
They were, yeah.
So that's good that you got these photos, guys.
They were spooked, yeah. Yeah. One of the challenges of all bird photography. And this was a great black hawk. And I know my control panel is down here. Boy, that's about as much
fish that it's eating.
Yeah, that's about as much as I can move it, but that's a fish. That's why it's titled Stay Away from My Fish. Then I'm going to have to move this back so I can advance it. And then this was just spectacular as it was taking off, the shoulders, long legs, the tail, the claws down here. You know, another great shot by Bibzi.
It is. It's a beautiful bird. And when we were up on the escarpment, I don't know whether maybe nobody got photos of it because I didn't see them, but we had a couple of these go right overhead. And then there were also, what were they? Black hawk eagles, I think.
Black hawk eagles.
Yeah, even bigger than these.
Yeah.
The raptors at the escarpment were amazing. And also at Crooked Tree.
And here it's distinctive with its tail bands. It's the double white tail bands there. This was like, you know, the next second after the previous shot, it looks like, right after its takeoff. And a black-collared hawk, this one's noted as being immature. And then in the air, this is an adult. Has a rusty breast, black collar, sharp black collar, therefore its name. And both Roger and Bibzi have some great in-flight shots that are some of the most difficult birding shots you can take, but this is just amazing, an amazing capture here, really is. And a snail kite, a familiar friend. It likes Belizean snails too, apparently. Couch's kingbird, like the tropical kingbird, the TK that Mary was referring to. Just sounds a little bit different, looks very close. And another flycatcher, the common toady flycatcher. This is a very wet one. Has it's small, yellow and black. Vermilion flycatcher, of course, very distinctive. We've got the male and female represented here. And the brown-crested flycatcher, just to round out the flycatchers, like Mary said, a lot of them. Bigger bill, has more of a crest than the great crested. Lesser goldfinch, more black than our American goldfinch. And a peekaboo shot with a mangrove vireo. You can see the little yellow on the lures. Likes to hide in the mangroves. Of course, there are plenty of mangroves here at Crooked Tree. I think this is the jabiru. This is the stork that is there. That's Crooked Tree is famous for. It's unmistakable. It's really difficult and not cooperative for viewing, but this one we managed to get in flight. And then a green heron right at home in Belize too. This is another excellent in-flight photograph. And the northern jacana that has long green toes for walking in the grass. This one didn't like the fact that we were driving by it in the boat. Apparently it was squawking at us. And then the jacana in flight. Again, great photo after it took off. After complaining so much, it took off. Bright yellow wings you can see in flight. Bright yellow forehead and bill. Ring kingfisher. A little bit larger than our belted kingfisher. Has a reddish chest and body. Just sitting on a wire there that morning. Looking for some fish. And a Baltimore oriole. Full breeding colors here. Was about ready to head home maybe a few days after we headed for home. But this is a great shot. So colorful. And here's vermilion flycatcher saying goodbye. As the Baltimore oriole lands on the branch, the vermilion flycatcher says, "I'm out of here." The vermilion flycatcher is a year-round resident of Belize, and they do get up to the U.S. Southwest. So, in total, we had 204 species that we saw during our basically 5-day trip. And amazingly enough, 106 were non-U.S. species that we saw. So if you've never birded in the tropics, this is a great place to go to see a lot of different species in a short period of time. You know, as we said in the video, it's a small country, but it has a very high bird species density. And more than likely, if you haven't really birded in the tropics, you'll probably add 90 to 100 new species to your bird list very easily. So here we are, our last night out, and we had ended up with 9 satisfied birders. We also want to thank the following for helping us enjoy our birding in Belize. Mary made mention of the excellent guides that we had, because we would not have seen nearly as much without the guides. You can't really do it by yourself. These folks live there, they bird there, they know the spots, they know where to look, they know what to listen for, and that they're able to find things that we would not have noticed. So we mentioned them here. Emmanuel Cordova was our driver, Levi Blanco, Luis Romero, and then Diego Cruz was our guide at Crooked Tree. So they, like Mary, without these folks, we would not have been able to see as much as we did. Okay, I'm going to stop share, and we can open things to to questions. We can do our best to answer. I see that we still have most everybody here, and I'll check on the chat. I don't see
There's
questions.
no questions in the
there.
chat.
Let's see, Sandy Townsend did say, does the wattle serve a purpose on the turkeys? I think you're referring to the ocellated turkeys that we saw all around the lodge.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about the spots.
Oh,
the
the spots.
The little warts.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I believe they were on the male turkeys, which
They're sexy. That's why they have them.
yeah, it looks attractive to the lady turkeys.
Yeah, beauty spots.
That makes sense.
Sorry, I missed your question, Sandy. You did
Actually,
have
it
one.
doesn't make sense, but
The turkeys, it makes sense.
The eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Other questions? And I would rely on my team of experts and fellow travelers if there are other questions.
I personally don't travel much outside the US other than Mexico. So I'm curious, did you have to exchange US dollars for the local currency or
No,
no?
no, not at all. Actually, the exchange rate is easy to figure out, easy to calculate. It's 2 to 1, 2 Belizean dollars to 1 American dollar. And frankly, with the pandemic, they were hit very, very hard. They rely a lot on tourism. It's a very big industry. It's a very poor country. And the cruise industry is starting to come back, but it can't come back fast enough for them. No, the
The fact
exchange
that it's
rate.
an English-speaking country, I think, makes it probably easier for a lot of folks.
It's
to
a tremendous
travel in
advantage for them
Latin
that it's an
America.
English-speaking
Everybody
country.
speaks English there.
Yes, yes. It's actually trilingual. Some people in the interior speak old Maya dialects, you might call them. Also, many people speak Spanish because it's surrounded by Spanish. But if they speak Spanish, they speak English too, because English is, I'm not sure if it's the official language, but it had 100 years under British rule. Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, is still on the currency. It's part of the Commonwealth of Nations, and so on and so forth. But they really need the tourism. It's they really welcome the tourists. It's a poor country. They have, and as far as their tourism, they also are emphasizing the ecotourism. So not just birding, not just going on zip lining in the rainforest and that sort of thing, but of course they have the second largest barrier reef in the world off the coast. And so it's big on snorkeling, on scuba diving, and that sort of thing. The beaches are very nice. If you've ever been to the Mexican, what do they call it, the Costa Maya, the Maya Riviera, or along Cancun and Cozumel, the beaches there are beautiful. Those extend down into the northern part of Belize. Maybe you've heard of San Pedro. Yeah, San Pedro is an area made famous by Madonna by her song La Isla Bonita. Maybe you remember that from. Maybe you don't go back to the 80s, but that was written about Belize, and that really is what started Belizean tourism about 30 years ago. but they do emphasize the nature tourism, the ecotourism, and the Chanchich Lodge is just first class. Again, it's hard to say too much about them there. Everything was just
Really was.
ideal. Everything, they hit all the right buttons.
Belize is a nice place to go if you've never been birding in the tropics before, for some of the same reasons we've been talking about here. English is the official language, so you don't have too much trouble communicating with people. And you get a nice introduction of tropical birds. There's a huge variety there, as you've seen. And it's not that far. It's what, maybe a 3-hour flight from Tampa to Belize. Very, very easy to get to. It's not terribly expensive. There are a number. Chanchich is one of the nice lodges. I haven't been to that one. I was at Black Rock.
Yeah.
There's another really nice lodge.
And Chanchich is definitely a first class lodge. It's not inexpensive.
The Crooked Tree is a great place to go.
Right.
I say it's a nice place to go if you've never been birding in the tropics before. It's a good place to go and get an introduction.
I'd go again.
Me too.
Would too.
When? Let's do it.
Yeah, we certainly enjoyed it.
We had a great group. We all
Yes.
really got along really well together.
It was a lot of fun, and the birding was incredible. Ah.
Whoa.
And you got free beer.
Yeah.
That's right. The guy who owns Chanchich, or the company that owns Chanchich, also owns the brewery that makes the Belican beer that Mike talked about earlier, and they also have the Coca-Cola distributorship for the country. So they have diversified interests.
Yeah.
And don't forget the chocolate sundaes.
Oh, yeah, they were very good.
Thank you so much for sharing all of y'all's pictures, and thanks, Michael, for picking up where Mary left off.
Well, we're a team. We all work together. Okay, anything else, anyone?
Those pictures were really good. Glad to see them all in one place and get to see them.
Thank you so very much.
Thank
I
you.
think that was a small fraction of the total number of
Oh,
photos
my,
taken.
yes.
Would
Yes.
you agree, Roger?
Oh,
and
yeah,
Bibzi?
yeah. We could